Imagine standing at a checkout line. You have the same cart you've had every week for 3 years. Same brand of soup, same bread, same blood pressure medication you picked up at the pharmacy counter on the way in. Last February, that cart cost you $92. This month, it's $108. Nothing in the cart changed. You didn't upgrade anything. You didn't add anything. But somehow, quietly, without anyone announcing it, the number on that screen went up. Again. And you're standing there on a fixed income, doing the math in your head the way you always do. Something has to go. That moment, that specific, silent, brutal moment at the checkout line, is happening to millions of American retirees right now. Not as a metaphor, not as an economist's projection. As a lived weekly reality, and the reason it's happening has a name. Tariffs. A tariff is a tax. That's it. That's the whole secret. When the US government places a tariff on goods coming in from China, Canada, or the European Union, American importers pay more to bring those products in. And within weeks, sometimes days, that cost travels down the chain and lands in your cart, on your pharmacy receipt, on your utility bill. The foreign country doesn't absorb it. The corporation doesn't absorb it. You do. For a dual-income household with growing salaries, that's painful but survivable. For a 71-year-old living on $1,550 a month from Social Security, that's not an inconvenience. That's a decision. A real, agonizing decision about what gets cut this month. If your income doesn't rise, but every single cost does, what exactly are you supposed to cut? That question doesn't have a comfortable answer. And right now, millions of people are being forced to find one. Let's talk about medication. Because this is where the numbers get genuinely alarming. Last February, a common generic blood pressure medication, the kind tens of millions of seniors take every single day, averaged $37 for a 90-day supply at major pharmacy chains. This month, that same prescription is running $49 at many locations. Some people are seeing even higher. That's a 32% increase. On a medication that hasn't changed, that hasn't improved, that is the same pill in the same bottle, just caught in the crossfire of a trade dispute between governments that retirees had no vote in starting. The reason is supply chain arithmetic. The United States manufactures very little of its own generic medication. The active chemical compounds in most generics come from factories in China and India. When tariffs go up on Chinese imports, pharmaceutical companies face a choice between absorbing the cost or passing it on. They pass it on. And the person absorbing it, quietly, every month, is someone who is 74 years old on a fixed income and has been taking that pill since 2017. Tariffs don't feel like policy. They feel like a bill nobody warned you about, a bill that shows up every month and keeps going up. Now here's what makes this moment, this specific month, February 2026, different from any tariff dispute we've seen before. It's not one sector, it's not one product category, it's everything, simultaneously. In the past 12 months, the United States has escalated tariffs across electronics, appliances, steel, aluminum, pharmaceuticals, food products, clothing, and furniture. The categories hitting retirees hardest aren't luxury imports. They're the things seniors buy on repeat, every week, with no flexibility to substitute away from. Cooking oil, up. Canned goods, up. Frozen proteins, up. Home heating equipment, up. Medical devices, up. Generic medications, up. And Social Security's cost of living adjustment for 2026, 2.5%. Independent economists tracking actual senior spending patterns, not the government's general inflation basket, but the specific things older Americans buy, are calculating effective inflation rates for retirees closer to 5. On 6, even 7% when healthcare and housing are properly weighted. That gap between the 2.5% the government says it's giving you and the 6% reality you're living, that is where the retirement crisis is hiding in plain sight, right now, this month. Let's put a concrete number on what this actually means. Conservative estimates from multiple independent economic research groups suggest that the average retiree household is absorbing between $900 and $1,400 in additional annual costs, directly and specifically attributable to tariff-driven price increases. On an income of $1,800 a year, losing $100 and $200 to hidden tariff costs isn't a rounding error. It's a copay that doesn't get made, a heating bill that gets deferred, a grocery cart that quietly shrinks, fewer items, cheaper brands, smaller portions, week by week, month by month, in real time. Economists call this demand destruction. It sounds clinical and distant. What it actually looks like is a 73-year-old woman standing in a pharmacy, putting one of her 2 prescriptions back because she can only afford to fill one this month. That is not a hypothetical. That is happening right now across this country. And then there's the retirement savings dimension, which is its own separate catastrophe unfolding in slow motion. Every time a new wave of tariff escalations is announced, markets react. They've been reacting. violently at times since late 2025. Between last fall and today, the S&P 500 has experienced multiple significant correction episodes tied directly to trade policy announcements. Each dip, even temporary ones, hits retirement accounts hard. But here's what's different about being 70 versus being 35 when markets drop. At 35, you wait. Time is on your side. You've seen recoveries, you stay the course. At 70, you don't have that runway. If you're drawing down your portfolio to cover a heating bill this winter during a tariff-triggered market drop, you're locking in those losses permanently. There is no recovery you'll live long enough to wait for. That is the wound nobody is talking about loudly enough. It doesn't show up in a single news cycle. It accumulates quietly, in real time, in the retirement accounts of people who did everything right and are still watching the ground shift underneath them. So what are the people in Washington saying? Supporters of the current tariff strategy argue that short-term pain is the price of long-term national strength. Rebuild domestic manufacturing, reduce dependency on China, create leverage in trade negotiations. These are legitimate arguments. Supply chain vulnerability is a genuine national security concern. The pandemic proved that. But here's the question. Nobody is answering directly on any side of this debate. Who is paying the transition cost? If rebuilding American pharmaceutical and industrial capacity takes 15 to 20 years, a realistic estimate, who carries the financial burden while that transition happens? Not the 40-year-old whose salary has room to grow, not the corporate executive with a long-term compensation structure. It's the 69-year-old who retired last year, the 74-year-old on Medicare who can't switch medications, the 77-year-old widow whose savings are evaporating faster than any adjustment can compensate for. The people with the absolute least flexibility are being handed the heaviest load. And that's not an accident of bad luck. It's the structural outcome of a policy that was designed without them in the room. There are people fighting to change this, though quietly and mostly outside the headlines. Several senior advocacy organizations are pushing for what they call tariff shielding, formal exemptions for essential goods like prescription drugs, medical devices, and food staples from tariff, increases during periods of elevated inflation. The idea is not to abandon trade policy. It's to ensure that the most vulnerable consumers aren't the ones absorbing its costs in real time. Some economists have proposed a tariff dividend, a direct rebate to lower-income Americans funded by tariff revenue, similar to how some states have approached carbon tax revenue. The concept is straightforward. If tariffs raise prices broadly, the revenue they generate should go back, at least in part, to the people least able to absorb those price increases. These conversations are happening. Whether they produce legislation before 2027 is the real question. And for millions of retirees, 2027 is not an abstract future date. It's another year of decisions, another year of the same impossible math. If you are retired right now, or approaching retirement, or you have a parent navigating this, here is what is worth doing immediately, not eventually, this month. Call your pharmacy and specifically ask whether there is a therapeutic alternative to your most expensive prescriptions, a different formulation, a different manufacturer, a different dosage configuration. That isn't subject to the same price pressures. Last February, most people didn't know to ask that question. This February, it could save you hundreds of dollars a year. Look at your portfolio's exposure to sectors that move most sharply with tariff news cycles. Technology hardware, industrials, and companies with major China-linked supply chains. If you're within 5 years of retirement or already drawing down, the risk calculus has changed this year in ways that weren't true in 2023. And check whether you or someone you love qualifies for supplemental assistance programs, Medicare Extra Help, state pharmaceutical assistance programs, LEHEAP for heating costs. These programs exist. They are underutilized. And right now, with costs compressing from every direction, they matter more than they did a year ago. Here's what I want to leave you with. Tariff policy is not inherently wrong. Nations protect industries. Nations negotiate leverage. Nations make difficult trade-offs. But economic policy that doesn't account for who actually absorbs the cost isn't just bad economics. It's a failure of something more fundamental. The generation currently in retirement built the infrastructure of American prosperity. They worked through recessions, stagflation, 2 wars, a financial crisis, and a pandemic. They paid into systems for 40 years because they were told those systems would be there. What is happening right now, quietly, in real time this month, is that the cost of a geopolitical trade strategy is landing disproportionately and invisibly on the people who have the least capacity to push back. A grocery cart that used to cost $92 now costs $108. A prescription that was $37 last February is $49 today. And a generation that already gave everything is being asked without being asked to give a little more. That's not a trade policy talking point. That's someone's life, and it deserves to be said out loud.